Metallica, they're like, no, only Japanese heavy metal.
Right.
Can you speak to the evolution of music in particular and other cultural arts being more self-contained?
Great question. Oh my
in
God.
Japan and Asia, and less geared towards emulating Western counterparts?
This is a fantastic question. I hope you all heard it. Japan, up until the mid-90s, was very much into poorly emulating Western music. And I say that with all due respect. But in the mid-90s, Japanese music took on a new direction with producers like Tsunku and Komuro-san and Oda-san, Oda Tetsuro, and other people. Their productions were more Japanese sounding. They sounded like Japanese music, kaio-kyoku. They sound more like Japanese music. Up until then, there was a lot of bad Chicago covers, bad Carpenters covers, bad Billy Joel covers. It just was like, no, don't do that. And in the mid-90s, then came the super J-pop thing happened. These producers started really doing Japanese music with Japanese influence in it. And they kind of lost the Western complex. And like, look, we've got this great music here. And this was like the birth of Amuro-chan and Bees and Hamazaki and like the 90s type of music. Then it started to get more and more Japanese. Then you got 2000s, and it's completely Japanese music. And you listen to stuff like, what was big in the 2000s, like Mr. Children, and the big arena acts like that. That music, it doesn't sound anything like anything American. It's very Japanese. It's very, like music like Ikimonogakari and things like that. The melodies are very Japanese. And what I mean by Japanese is they don't follow like American rock blues motifs. They follow like, almost like easy listening jazz chord changes, but played in rock or dance music or metal or pop. So the 2000s happened, and then 2010s, idol music just became so huge, and producers like Hyadain, when you get to his music, there's like zero Western influence in there. It's so incredibly Japanese. It's like no shukute, concentrated. And now, if you listen to Japanese pop music, it's so deeply Japanese that if you're a fan of that, you probably wouldn't have much interest in foreign music, and vice versa. So in Japan, you'll have two separate kinds of fans. Remember how I was talking about in America, genres separate the music? In Japan, it's different. There's domestic artists and international artists. A lot like people you met, we don't know any of those American metal bands. We only listen to Japanese music. In Japan, 80% of music fans are listening to domestic Japanese music. It's a completely contained musical business society there. And then the other 20% are listening to U2, Metallica, Mariah Carey, Mastodon, Justin Bieber, whoever is happening here in America. You can tell I haven't been here in a while. But whatever's happening in America is in the other 20%.
But at the same time, some of the jazz musicians or those really eclectic musicians here in America actually find its way into the Japanese music industries, and then they are sort of past CDs were reissued by the Japanese companies. And
well, that's a completely different genre.
Right.
In Japan, there's always interest in musicianship, like classical music and jazz music.
Right.
And there's always a core audience of people who follow people for those reasons. But I thought it was fascinating to find that people who listen to Japanese music only generally don't listen to foreign music. And when I came to Japan, I wanted to get in that domestic music scene. So before I came, I was in a band called Megadeth, and we were a completely international scene. So I wanted to join these bands and play with these artists and become in this part of this world. They didn't know who Megadeth was. They just knew it was some American thing they heard of. They had no idea. So I was starting from zero. And if they did, they just thought, oh, Megadeth is a scary metal band from America, oh my God. So it kind of went against me as much as it helped. So it was kind of like evened it out when I first got there. But I was very surprised. So if you go to like a concert and you see these people rocking out to this full-on metal Japanese music. If you ask them, have you heard of Pantera? And they're like, no. Well, that music sounds just like Pantera. I don't care. It's a completely unusual musical landscape, but it also translates into culturally, Japan is kind of closed off, and it's a the whole society is self-contained because the language is, if you speak Japanese in Japan, you're done, you're set, you'll have no problem. Whereas in other countries, you might need to learn a couple languages to get by. So a lot of Japanese don't feel the urge, I've got to learn English or else. They don't have that necessity. Of course, some people do, and they have the passion to do that. It's very unusual. So in Japan, it's a very unique society system.
Yeah, that's my problem in terms of actually getting a project like this, and exchange, cultural exchange between Japan and the U.S. And sometimes it's really hard to get the Japanese, excited about it, rather than Americans.
That's a very good point. The point is, hitsuyose,
Right.
necessity. In Japan, there is no necessity for English.
Right.
But however, the Olympics are coming, and living there, you can see people trying to ramp up their English.
Sure.
They're ramping it up. On some taxis, there's a vacant sign written in English. It's so small, nobody could read it anyway. Kimochi wa arigatai desu. I have a question.
Yeah, so my question again regarding the Olympics, you were saying you're the ambassador now. So now from how you come from Arizona all the way to going to an ambassador, what is your role as an ambassador? Is it more...
Well, it's not like the ambassador, like where I'm going to have to do anything like press nuclear buttons or anything like that. Officially what it is, it's the ambassador to Japan Heritage. And what Japan Heritage is right now I think there's 39 points of interest, so to speak, in Japan. And all the cities and prefectures of Japan lobby to get their points of interest listed as a Japan Heritage Point of Interest. And what I was, I'm beyond flattered to be asked to do this. But basically I think what they appointed me to do is what I'd be basically doing anyway, which is going to other countries and talking to people who are interested about Japan. I would be doing that anyway. So I think maybe, the Japanese government got wind of it and they liked what I was doing maybe, or maybe it's some of the things that I do in Japan. But either way, they put me, in a group with Matsui and a couple of very famous chefs and people that are way out of my league. And so I'm just very flattered about it. And it's basically what I'm doing here. And hopefully people who are slightly curious about Japan, kind of like I'm an insider, you know what I mean? It's like, if he tells you about Japan, it's one way, but like, how many American guys are going to believe a Japanese guy talking about his own country? You know what I mean? Even though he's going to tell you something that's more meaningful than what I'm even going to tell you. But somehow, foreigners will relate to a foreigner when they're explaining something because of the point of view that I have.
Sure, exactly.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it just my impression, but when I go to public places in Japan, like supermarkets or department stores, they're not playing music, they're playing jazz. Has that been your experience? I've encountered
Very
that.
good point, super point. They're playing jazz, they're playing pop, they're playing heavy metal, they're playing like rare stuff in family restaurants.
Yeah.
Like I was just walking down the street and walking by, do you know this place called Sukiya? It's just like a totally like, it's like, I guess like McDonald's or something in Japan. It's like a totally cheap family restaurant kind of place, really good, but, and they were blasting this heavy metal. And not only heavy metal, it's like this rare band that I like called Damone. And probably nobody's heard of them, but like, it's like you have to be a record collector to even know these guys. And you're walking by this totally mainstream restaurant, they're blasting this. I'm like, this is why Japan is cool. And sometimes you'll go to places like Denny's or something, and they're playing something that's like as heavy as Slayer or something like that. And it's totally normal. Of course, sometimes they're playing stuff that just makes you want to puke. It's not always your favorite music. But I think the freedom of whoever's running the store probably plays whatever's in his iPod.
Exactly.
Great point.
Hi, I'm Juno. I'm Argentinian, and I've been studying Japan for 8 years. I moved here because I have a Japanese music band. I write the songs. I've tried everything. And my question is it better to try to make it here and record and give it to agents here, or just go there and try to, I don't know, it's a hard question, but...
It's a great question. And Argentina is one of my favorite countries in the world, of course. I was just there. I was just there. Your band sings in Japanese?
Yeah, I sing. Well, I just moved from Puerto Rico, and now I'm here. I'm trying to start again with the band, but I'm the one who writes the song. I play the guitar. And I write
And you
the-
sing in Japanese?
Yes.
And you can speak Japanese?
Yes, I've been studying for 8 years. It's so hard. I'm taking the JLPT 4 in December. It's so hard.
Oh my
But I
God.
love Japanese. I love the culture. So that's why I moved here. And I went to Japan. I went to Funky Monkey Baby's producer to give the CD. Like, hi, this is my music. They're like, Nani?
You give your music to Funky Monkey Baby's producer?
Yeah, because I was like, what should we do? We went to Roppongi, right? And we were knocking doors and trying to get the CD. And it was completely random because I'm from Argentina, and the music I was doing at that time was very basic Japanese. So I've studied hard. I'm writing a haiku book too in Japanese. I love it so much. So I'm trying, but I see that it's hard. So I don't know. I moved here, and I don't know if I should go and knock on agents' doors or move over there and try. I'm giving everything I have.
Fantastic question, and this applies to anybody doing something similar. Moving to America to do something in Japan is kind of like the long way around. But it's on the way from Argentina, so it's a start. It's a start. Living in Japan will force you to do whatever it is you need to get to the next step. It's going to force you to do it. Making it in music in any country, in any language, is like winning the lottery. You have to just completely devote everything to that. And once you've exhausted every possible thing you can, that's the best you can do. Then it's all luck after that. But going to Japan was a fantastic first step, and I know it's a hard thing to do, to plan and to make things happen over there. I would say do that again and keep honing your music and get kind of a web presence in Japanese, make Japanese friends on the internet, and try to get your music heard by as much Japanese people as possible. And hopefully someone in Japan will find it interesting or cute or whatever. Hey, this girl, and a lot of things, what happens to gaijin is they'll do something interesting like that, and some TV show or some project will hear about it, and they'll showcase it, and that's the end of it. Because we're novelties over there, okay? Foreigners over there, I feel like, are very much a novelty. So a novelty is a good way to get in, but just because you get in there, it's going to take a lot more commitment to have any kind of staying power, and it's going to take your entire life. But Japan loves new things, and they really love it when you take an interest in the country of Japan. And as long as you have that in your heart and it's real, you're going to make friends there. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how many people enjoy your music. Just because it's a novelty, you might get a little attention, but if people don't enjoy it as much as you hope, there's nothing you can do about that. But just keep going to Japan and keep communicating with Japan, and I hope all the best things happen for you.
All right.
Yeah.
One last music question from the gentleman from the back.
So I was recently in Tokyo looking for vinyl records, and I noticed in many of the shops.
Looking for what?
I was
Vinyl?
Yeah, vinyl, and I
Okay.
noticed you can rent CDs, which in America would be unthinkable. So I was just wondering, like, how does that work, or how does that help out the musicians? Because you think in America people would either use streaming or they
Renting CDs? Did you ask about why they rent CDs?
right.
Okay. In Japan, this has gone on ever since they had CDs. Like, you know how you have video stores in America? Or maybe not anymore, but you could rent CDs from Tower Records or whatever at any music store. I never really got that myself. I really don't have a good answer for that, but I think, do you have an answer for that? Does anybody have an answer for that?
I think because the Japanese housing don't have enough space, so they, always like limited. And then the library or the rental stores will pay to the record company when they buy the records, so the musician at least get royalties.
You should sit here, I'll sit. That's such a perfect answer, and I should have had it, because that is the answer. In Japan, so many things in your daily life revolve around space and making the best use of little space. And I was just in my mom's apartment building, and I noticed that there's so many rooms in this apartment building, and there's only like 3 floors. And I live in a building with 32 floors, and there's less rooms than a 3-floor building in America. So what that means is, in America, everything is spread out this way. In Japan, everything goes up this way, and things are very, very narrow. So it's all about saving space.
Can you play your musical instruments in your apartment or where you live, or do you?
I'm so lucky that where I live, it's boom, soundproof.
Right.
So stupid.
Okay, let's move on.
This guy's been waiting. Let me get his question.
Oh, okay.
What was your favorite band, J-pop in Japan, and what is your favorite Japanese food?
My favorite music changes like every week. Right now there's this new idol group called Maneki Ketchup. If there's one person in here who knows them, I would be stoked. One.
Wow.
One, all right, that's cool. Maneki Ketchup, just fantastic, unbelievable arrangements. What they are is it's an idol group. They have like 2 main singers, and one of them has like a really terrible enemy voice, and one of them has a really pretty good vocal singing voice, and that is Shin Shokan. It's just so weird to hear that contrast, and the song arrangements are so adventurous and really, really goosebumps. Really, really good, really good. Maneki Ketchup. And favorite food is sushi.
All right. All right, move
Thank
on.
you.
Oh, this is already been, I guess, answered, I guess, and this is probably, how can I learn Japanese? Yeah, we already touched upon it. So, let's move on to the lifestyle.
All right.
What aspect of living in Japan do you still find difficult when compared to aspects you have adapted to?
Nothing really.
Nothing.
Nothing. When I first moved there, I had a little incident with garbage.
That's a huge problem for all the non-Japanese people who started to live in Japan.
And they are very serious about how you throw away your garbage.
All right.
Don't mess up.
Like a 20 categories sometimes, Tokyo is out of this on that.
分別は本当のものです。
Right.
Make it really short, I was living by myself in this building, and you've got to throw your trash out, and it's got to be separated properly in plastic bags. Some places are really strict. The plastic bags have to be clear so you can see everything in it, and write your phone number on it. This is a real thing. And so what I did was I had my plastic bags of stuff, and I was putting them out in the place, stebate, eigo de nani, garbage. There's a special place, I don't know if they have it here. It's like a warded off place where you put your garbage. And not a chute, God no, I've never seen a chute in Japan.
Okay.
They would never have that in Japan.
Right.
So I put these bags down, and I put one bag down, and then I put another bag down, and it made a sound like clink. And then as soon as that clink sound happened, the lady whose job it is to watch that stuff came running from her place, and then she heard it, and then she looked in there, and there was like a glass bottle in the bottom of the bag, and glass bottles go in here. And it was so embarrassing because it was in front of a bunch of other people. And like, I kind of stand out a little bit over there. But they are really serious about that. And you get used to it by having experiences like that.
Right. That's gonna be my culture shock after I go back to Japan. You know,
Yeah.
Here in Los Angeles, everything goes to the dumpsters.
There's no trash cans there
Right.
anywhere,
Landfill.
but everything is totally clean.
Yeah.
And even though I never thought about it once in my life before living there, I'm constantly thinking about where am I going to throw this out? Where am I going to throw this out? Walking around with, I carry this bag, and it's walking around with trash, because you got to be a daihyo, you got to be a representative. Even if you live there, if everybody knows you live there, or you're a tourist or whatever, all of us who are not Japanese, we are representing our country. You Argentina, you England probably, and America, and all these people, they are so curious about foreign people in Japan. I wish Americans were more curious about the other countries. It's kind of a little bit embarrassing as American. We have so many fantastic cultures living together in America, and it just doesn't seem like they share the interest in the other cultures as much as Japanese do. But at the same time, you can really fuck up with this. When you're in Japan, you all of a sudden represent the entire country, of whatever country you're at. You can take this as an advantage this is your chance to show how cool Austrian people are, or how cool French people are, American people are, or you can totally blow it for all the good people from your country. They will remember what you do. So they'll be saying, I saw this girl from Australia. It was nice, but she wore this perfume that stunk so bad in the airplane. And this is what they remember. So they will remember every little detail about you and your culture. So this is one important thing I'd like to say. A lot of Americans and foreign people coming to Japan are really concerned about being polite and being the Japanese cultures and all that stuff and doing the right thing. Don't worry about any of that stuff at all, because you'll get a pass on all of it. But what you don't get a pass on are things that are just bad, like not nice things, just being inconsiderate or rude or nasty or expecting things to be like it is in your country, or just common sense, basically. So don't worry about, I didn't bow or I shake his hand when I shouldn't have. Don't worry about all this stuff you read in the tourist books. Just be a nice person, and then you'll represent your country. So they will allow you there's no way to remember all the cultural things they have with the trash and the shoes and all that stuff.
I mean, this could happen to any country here in America or Europe. When someone commits a crime, if he's a fellow, countryman, it's just a sort of piece of news. But if you are non-resident or immigrant, then
It's the worst.
all of a sudden that a foreigner commits a crime. That's the headline of the news. So yeah, that's probably what you're saying.
It's the worst. So I just so love it when people come from America and do cool things, and whatever they do. A lot of Americans come and work in various jobs, and whenever they make a good impression, it looks great on me, it looks great on all of America. And so I think it's more important to remember that they see a big flag on your head. Even though I live there, I speak Japanese, I completely am not in any kind of foreigner community there. I'm completely immersed in Japanese. But still, I'm, as far as a lot of people concerned, American. And even in America, I didn't feel that much pressure. But when you're in a foreign country, you got to do that. So be at ease don't worry about breaking their rules. Just don't do anything that you'll be embarrassed
So
about.
now that you have adapted to the Japanese culture so much, Tori, then do you get sort of a reverse culture shock when you get back to U.S.? Coming through LX and like this time.
Every time I come here, I just notice that I don't know a lot of the people that I should know. The people who are on TV and front page of the magazines. Who's that guy? And when I get to America, I grew up in Maryland, so it's kind of like sort of normal America. And when I come to LA, it just looks like it could be it could be Malaysia, where a lot of cultures are mixing. And that's a great thing, because people are living together and get to the benefit of living with other cultures. But I find that America is a very unique thing, which is a fantastic thing. This guy's been waiting with a question.
Yeah.
Do people in Japan understand that the current administration doesn't necessarily represent us?
I'm not even going to go there. Definitely this is a great point, because if you go to Japan or probably any foreign country and start getting into American politics, they're going to think it's not going to turn out good for you. Even though there are people who, specialty. If you might want to get into a circle of people who talk about that kind of thing. But generally, the people that I'm around, the subject of politics has never come up once in my 15 years. And one time I had to do a TV show about Trump, Viking. And I know zero about politics, zero. And all of a sudden I'm on like this primetime, lunchtime chat show. And I'm Mr. America with the flag on the face. And they're asking me about Trump stuff. So I'm like boning up on all this stuff. And it turns out all they wanted to know was like something about he's got like a little kid or is his grandson or something. Or they just wanted to know like typical gossip stuff, so I was okay. I kind of joked through, but it's not my specialty. So I prefer to stay away from it. But one of the things I've enjoyed about Japan is if you're ensconced with your own, whatever it is you do. I do music, someone else is doing pottery or trains or electronics or whatever. You can pretty much avoid those political issues that seem to permeate the media over here whenever I peek into it. And I guess it keeps you focused on the thing that you're good at, in my case. But like if I were to have a conversation with you on that type of thing, you'd probably think I'm an idiot because I'm not informed as well as I should be had I be living in America. But one of the luxuries that I have about living in a country other than America is I just have to worry about the laws of the country that I live in and the social structure of that. As long as I don't make Americans look bad, I'm fine. I don't have to worry about who gets elected to this position and that type of thing. So that's the luxury thing. But to answer your question, I wish I could answer it, but I'm just not smart enough.
So apart from...
What's that? Oh God, I've never voted in my life. People hate me now, but I'm being honest with you. I'm going to say one thing on that, and this is, I don't know. I just have never in my life directly been affected by anyone in any political office. And probably I have. I've just never noticed it, and I just don't have that energy to get in there because it's, once you fall down that, once you fall down into there, there's no satisfaction in it. There's no satisfaction, there's never going to be, even in Japan, Japanese people talk about politics all the time, but I'm not qualified to really have an intelligent conversation on that. But if you want to talk about day-to-day life, I can go there in detail. Or music, I can go in detail. Or just basic cultural, normal things, but I am not any kind of political analyst. So for me, voting would be, I would have to do a lot of research, and I just don't have the intelligence or energy.
So apart from the politics,
Sorry.
what do you miss from living in the US?
I miss, of course, the main thing I miss is obviously my family. My family, what are you going to do? Bring your whole family to Japan? They've come and visited me, which is fantastic, but I miss my family by far the most, and I miss trash cans everywhere you go, and I miss, the language is my native language, so it's fun to speak in English, and it's a different taste. It's all good. I miss the people. I miss playing here, so that's why I come and play at least every other year, and I'm going to be touring next year, so I'm not really that much.
All right, speaking of trash cans, let's go to the manners then. Oh, there's a hand.
Okay, all right.
What age
I started playing at about 13 or 14, 13 and a half. How old are you? 8. One thing I know is come back to America, kids are about 1 million times smarter than when I lived here. You do what? You play Paul Gilbert? Wow. An 8-year-old can play Paul Gilbert. That's amazing.
I even played the first song of scenes of your album.
Of my album?
Wow.
Excellent taste, my friend.
And one of Dragon Kiss's songs.
Oh my God. Okay, what's your name?
Julian.
Julian, nice to meet you. You've got great taste in music.
We see the future here. And
I was wondering, I was just wondering if you were a U.S. citizen or if you have dual citizenship.
I'm a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
I'm full-on American.
Oh, okay.
Totally
Do
full-on.
you have any intentions on doing?
Have any what?
Do you have any intentions on doing a dual citizenship?
I don't, it's like the voting question. There are probably pluses to doing it, but I don't have the energy to look into the paperwork.
So make a comment about your impressions of the differences of humor in Japan and US.
Oh, it's so incredibly different. I don't know, any of you guys know who Park Kun is? He's like a American guy, speaks Japanese 1,000 times better than I do. And he started in Japan in the comedy field, which is so different because comedy in any other language other than your own is so difficult because there are references to things that happened when you didn't live there. Are you from England?
No,
Where are you from?
New York.
Oh, New York, okay.
LA now.
Like, so many references. Say you're from Japan, and you learning English, and you study so hard, and you watch some TV show, and then a comedian comes on and starts doing this rant about I Love Lucy. Everybody in the audience is breaking up. You know perfect English, but you have no idea what that is. That's what humor is in Japan. But the difference is Japan's history is about 5,000 years longer than ours. So they're talking about things, historical things that find their way into the Japanese language. You got to understand that to understand what's funny. So that fog takes even longer to clear up. And then they're speaking in Osaka dialect, which is even... So comedy is the biggest hurdle. So I have biggest respect for Park Kun for trying to do that and succeeding. But that's the difference. The history is different. And the places that they laugh are different. The joke, the funny point of the joke is different. I'm not smart enough to explain it, but it's different.
How about physical humor, like slapstick?
Yes, what is that? This thing. In Japan, they have what's called manzai, which is two guys basically arguing with each other. Yeah, and tsukomi. And yeah, you know what I'm saying? And it's so different. Is there anything like that in America? No.
It seems to some more Mexicans or something.
There's more Mexican. That's interesting. That's interesting.
all right. So we have a question
That's a tough
here. Okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Have you been to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, or you have not yet?
I have, yes. I love it. Fantastic. Some of the best food ever.